Hello, everybody, and welcome here to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Thank you for clicking by. This is all about wine education, and we give you the information you need to enjoy wine more. Now, a lot of my videos are actually based on wine qualification syllabus, so you'll find the information is fairly structured, very enjoyable. But like this video here, it's aimed at a certain syllabus. So this is the WSET Level 3. That's the Wine and Spirit Education Trust. And this is what we call the systematic approach to tasting. So how to taste wine in a professional way. We are here looking at Series 3 on the nose. So this is the middle series, talking about all things we need to understand in order to professionally write things around the nose. So we'll talk about the nose, and we're here on part 2 of 5. So this is looking at the primary aromas. So part 1 and part 2 available as free content. Part 3, 4, and 5 are only available to those of you who subscribe to my e-learning portal over at www.winewithjimmy. So parts 3, 4, and 5 are only available on my e-learning portal. If you do have any comments or questions, please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Make sure you put your comment below this video around what I'm talking about. So what you find in wines in terms of primary aromas. Do you like these kind of aromas, and so on? So here is the overview of the nose, which we have previously looked at. In the last video, I talked about the condition and intensity. I have now highlighted in green here the aroma characteristics that I'll be talking about in this video and the next 2 videos. So I break these videos down into the primary aromas, the secondary aromas, and the tertiary aromas. Development will be tackled last in this series. So what are primary aromas? Let's move on to the next one. There's the primary list for the systematic approach to tasting. So primary aromas are the aromas that exist after fermentation. Some aromas come from the grapes, and others, most, are created during the fermentation process. So grapes, when they are in the vineyard and when you're holding the actual physical raw material of grapes, they don't have a huge amount of varying flavor and aromas. When you bite into it, typically you just taste that kind of sugar, that grapiness that comes through. But some will have some specific compounds, even as a grape. There are some around there, like black pepper, for example, in Syrah. You can taste it in the grape. But when the grape then goes through fermentation, with the action of yeast on that sugar, there are hundreds of aromas, lots of chemical compounds that can be produced, which give wine, of course, its really distinctive characteristics in terms of aromas. Now, a simple wine may show a very limited number of primary aromas. Why? Often kind of in the same cluster or just a couple of clusters. And here, by the way, the column here on the left-hand side, which is in bold, are the clusters. And then within each cluster, you have descriptors. So you see floral is a cluster, and there are specific types of floral. In the level 3 systematic approach to tasting, you can put the clusters down, but you do need to be specific by putting the descriptors down. A more complex wine may display many more primary aromas in a range of clusters. The vast majority of wines display fruity aromas, but you should always consider whether a wine purely has fruit aromas or whether there are others from floral, herbaceous, herbal, spice, and so on. So there are many things to consider, of course. Now, the list you see there from top to bottom, it starts with floral to begin with. Now, floral is one of the most volatile, one of the most intensive. We love flowers because they can be very strong smelling. And that's why it's listed first. It's very typical to find floral in a wine. We then list the 4 clusters of white wine fruits. So that's green, citrus, stone, and tropical. We then list the 2 for red wines. Red and black fruit plus dried fruit comes after that. Then herbaceous, herbal, spice, and other. Okay, now it's not completely black and white. You can get, of course, white fruits like banana in a red wine. It is possible, but typically you find, like I just said with those groupings, the four: green, citrus, stone, tropical for white wines, and then red fruit, black fruit, dried fruit for reds typically. Okay, now I'm going to go through each of these clusters. So I'm going to show you some lovely pictures of the actual descriptors within each cluster. So first up, of course, is going to be floral. There you are. So there you see floral, very nice. Floral is that first cluster with a lot of volatility. You find a lot of intensity, and you'll find characteristics listed there like acacia. So acacia is over on the right-hand side, uh, the white petal with that little yellow center. Honeysuckle at the bottom right-hand side. Chamomile towards the top left. Geranium blossom. This is all kind of blossom. Rose, which is that red rose there towards the bottom, and violet towards your top right. Elderflower, by the way, is in the bottom left. So is a variety here. Now, with these aromas, we try and stick to these, but students may want to elaborate. They may want to add. If you have something which is fairly specific, but it's still considered relatively normal, you can add it. The examiner, the tutor, will check to see if it is there. Often I find students in floral may add jasmine, for example, certainly for Rieslings. So they're your floral compounds, very strong, typically if they are found in the wine. Next up, we are talking about the four categories of white wine fruit, beginning with green fruit. So that's your cluster, like apple, gooseberry, pear, pear drop, quince, and grape. So you'll see lots of these here. The large fruit in the middle here, the green fruit, is apple. Gooseberry is in the background, you'll see there with the white veins through it. You have pear to the right-hand side. Pear drop at the bottom. Now, some of you around the world may not know what pear drop is. So, pear drop is a sweetened version of pear, typically in sweets in the United Kingdom. We find them here, and they are very intensive. You find pear drop in white wines that are quite reductive and young. It's often a very sort of young taste in a wine, a reductive young taste. Quince to the top left, and grape to the bottom left. There are wines that have sugar, residual sugar, and that residual sugar comes from a grape, so we can align an aroma with grape. And typically, Germanic Rieslings, like a Mosel Cabernet Riesling, has a certain grapiness to it. So that's green fruit. Next up is your citric fruit category, including grapefruit, which you'll see towards the left-hand side. Lemon, which you of course see mostly towards the back. Lime sneaks in there, is the green lime. Orange peel and lemon peel towards the front. So these all depend, of course. These are all quite high in acidity. So you'll find acidity is very much important in the wine. You'll find these characteristics typically. And sometimes the lemon and lime can be more sort of juice or zesty. And the peel characters, now these can be a range of styles. I typically find peel in a lot of older reds, like an old Nebbiolo, for example. But you might find them in sweet white wines, like a Tokai or a Sauternes. It can have that as well. Okay, kind of like a botanical edge. So they are your citric category. We then have stone fruit. We're now getting into the realm of much more riper and sweeter fruits, fleshier. And we've got three listed here. So in the background are nectarines. Towards the left is apricot, and then peach is towards the right-hand side. There are variations of all of these, of course, like white peach. And you can also probably add into this the likes of mandarin. Now, stone fruits tend to be certainly in warmer places, but they can be in moderate. So moderate, warm, or hot. You'll certainly find these in white wines like Chardonnays and Chenin Blancs with that sort of warmer character coming through them. Okay, then we find the last category, which is tropical fruit, and a wonderful, quite exotic array of colours before your eyes. So, tropical fruits certainly are found in white wines, which are definitely more exotic and tend to be from warmer places. That is, tend to be. And you have banana, uh, often in kind of really ripe Chardonnays, lychee, which is very much quintessential in a Gewürztraminer, mango, which is something you often find in very exotic type Rieslings, melon, things like Torrontés can have that, Viognier, passion fruit in the likes of Sauvignon Blanc, and that's passion fruit is down towards the bottom there with the very hard skin and the wonderful sort of fleshy center to it, which has all of that sort of exotic intensity. And pineapple, which sits to your left of your picture there, something we find in the likes of more exotic and riper Chardonnays. Okay, so they're the four groupings for white wines. We then have the three grouping for red wines, starting with red fruits. So these are generally classic in more slightly elegant wines, typically cooler places. And you'll find things like Pinot Noir and Garnacha, Mencia, all displaying red fruit based characters. Red fruit like red currant, which you see towards the top right, cranberry towards the bottom right, raspberry towards the back, strawberry towards the front at the bottom, red cherry top left, and red plum towards the right hand side. Okay, so these characteristics, it all depends on the specific nature of the wine. You'll find that red currant and cranberry often have a little element of bitterness to them, as well as being red fruited. Raspberry and strawberry are often quite sweet most of the time, so they tend to be in slightly warmer climate reds. Red cherry, range of red cherries, and you can have those kind of sour red cherry element to them, which can be often in a fresher, cooler place, and then red plum. Next is black fruit. We tend to associate this with certain varieties and warmer conditions. Things like Cabernet Sauvignon will display very classic black fruit. So you'll find the likes of blackcurrant at the front bottom of your picture, blackberry towards the left, bramble, which is kind of blackberry and tayberry combined, blueberry to the bottom left, black cherry to the right, and black plum to the background of your picture. A variety of wine styles again, but generally in warmer places, you will find this kind of fruit category. Dried and cooked fruit will come from very warm places, and certainly grape growing techniques where the grapes have been left on the vine longer. A great example of this is Zinfandel from California, where the grapes are left longer on the vine and they sort of lightly shrivel up and they tend to produce kind of fig, raisin, pruny characteristics into the wine. So you'll see there towards the bottom right, fig, towards the bottom, prune, raisin in the background, sultana in the bottom left. There can be a certain jamminess, and that's what the Hartley's bottle is there on the left. And you might find also things like Kirsch, which is liqueur type versions of the fruit. So Kirsch is a liqueur cherry. I often find Chambord, which is liqueur raspberry in certain types of wines. Cassis, liqueur black currant, can be found in wines as well. It will be added to this list. So we've now done the fruits. We get into compounds that are based around herbaceous, herbal, the other category, and spice. First is herbaceous, nice and green slide here. Herbaceous tends to be in wine styles from cooler places and earlier picked varieties. One of the most famous is Sauvignon Blanc, displaying quite high levels of green pepper or capsicum. Grass at the bottom of your slide. Tomato leaf is kind of in the background. You'll see the tomatoes there, but tomato leaf, that very, very herbal, pungent character. Asparagus to the right, and blackcurrant leaf is in fact what is behind the wording there, which you get that more delicate sort of herbal character behind it. So these are green characters. The very much the Cabernet family, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Sauvignon Blanc are famed for displaying herbaceous characters. When you are in very warm places that display tropical and stone fruit, for example, or really rich black fruit, and you're in the jammy area with dried fruit, it's very unlikely that herbaceous will feature. So if you are picking tropical stone fruit and then the kind of ripe, dried, cooked fruit element, it's unlikely you will get these characteristics. Next step is herbal, which can actually be applicable to any style of wine. It depends on its locality. Sometimes this is a part of terroir or a certain grape variety. The left-hand side, you'll see eucalyptus, famed in areas like Coonawarra for Cabernet Sauvignon, but also in styles like Cabernet elsewhere in the world. Mint, which can be found in a variety of red wines through black grape varieties. Medicinal, lavender is your purple flower in the middle. I think we all know what that smells like. Very lovely fragrance to it. Fennel, which is the white crop towards the left, has that aniseed kick to it. And then dill towards the right, which has that very delicate touch, often paired with salmon, of course. The pungent spice category is only really two here. Black or white pepper. So we've got white pepper to the left, which is a little bit more delicate than black pepper. There's a pile of black pepper to the right, and then licorice. Typically, this category is with certain varieties which exhibit high levels of rotundone, which is the category. You find rotundone, the chemical compound, in things like juniper, in clove, in pepper, for example. Very famous one for this is Syrah or Shiraz, of course. And then finally, the other category, and I will talk about the sheep in the room, the elephant in the room on the left-hand side. You can get things like wet, woolly characters, sometimes with the likes of Riesling, for example. That's why we have a sheep to the left-hand side. And then reductive characters of flint and whetstones. There's a big chunk of flint to the right and whetstones in the back. People would describe this as minerality, but is typically found in certain varieties like, things like Melon Blanc, certain Chardonnays, Chablis, for example, Sancerre, where it is a moreover of winemaking process that gains these characters in the wine. So there you are. I know that was quite long, but there are the primary categories that one must go through when thinking about tasting wines for the systematic approach. Please do join me for part 3 when we talk about the secondary aromas of wine tasting. This part, along with part 4 and 5, are only available to those of you who subscribe to my e-learning portal over at www.winewithjimmy. You'll find a huge amount of information there to help you with your studies, including flashcards, multiple choice questions, short written answer questions, maps, and lots of exclusive videos. If you do have any comments on this video, please do drop it in the comment section below. Otherwise, if you do find yourself in the UK, come and say hello for a class, glass, or bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Ciao for now. Goodbye.